Jonesy and Amanda.
Jam Nation.
Our next guest story is unbelievable. He was adopted as a baby into a loving family, but curiosity of his biological parents would start a journey that would uncover a shocking truth. His parents were not just an ordinary couple, they were a Catholic priest and a nun. He has shared the story, this heart-wrenching story, in a new book called Tell No One, and he joins us now. Brendan Watkins, hi.
Brendan.
Hi, how are you?
So let's start at the beginning. What did you knew you were adopted, but what did you know of your biological parents?
Well, in the olden days, so I was born in Feb 61, you had no access to birth information. The laws were changed around the country at different stages, but in 1984, adoptees in Victoria were given access to their original birth certificates. So, it was the era of closed and forced adoptions, and in the 80s, so when I was in my 20s, I was legally given access to my birth information. And it's important to note that, most adoptees, particularly Catholic, you're sort of given this notion of gratitude. You need to show gratitude to your adoptive parents in not asking too many questions and, sometimes, particularly through the church, not trying to find your birth parents, because it's a sign of disrespect. And so I put it off. Eventually, my partner and myself were at the stage of thinking of having kids, a family, and she found out she had this sort of birth issue or genetic issue that was making her, or would make her, and potentially our children, allergic to anaesthetics, and that sort of got me over the line. So I applied for my birth certificate and I found out my mother's name.
When your father wasn't mentioned on the birth certificate?
No, and very, very often not. The father's not there, it's just the mother. So my scenario was not unusual, but what was unusual about my original birth certificate was that my mother's name wasn't the Anglo name I was anticipating, and it had her age, and she was 27 when she surrendered me, which is a lot older than, the stereotypical. Normally it's teenagers, late teenage years, passion gets the better of them, a child emerges and they surrender the child. But so my birth certificate just sort of posed a whole lot of additional questions. It didn't really answer anything.
Yeah, and particularly when you found out that your mother knew of your whereabouts, was happy to hear about you and that she loved you, but did not want, under any circumstances, any contact.
Yeah, that's right. And, the Catholic Family Welfare Bureau that managed my adoption contacted her on my behalf, and they got back to me and sat me down and said, we've spoken to your mother, she's alive, which was, good news. But you'll never see her, you'll never talk to her. Go home and forget about Maggie forever. I found it very hard to accept that, but with the news that I had her name, and I knew where she was born. And given this health issue that my partner had, my partner Kate contacted a distant family member of hers, which, suddenly became my distant family member. And it's a long story, but the short version was the family member, her sister-in-law, said, "Oh, you mean Maggie the nun?"
Yeah. And that was it. And you went, whoa. And then that was the shock. And then you found out that your dad was a priest.
Yeah, well, look, that took essentially 30 years.
Did you feel you'd been ripped off, that your actual birth parents lived together and had a relationship and you weren't part of that?
Yeah, look, I found out in amongst my research that I found out that my parents were living together. So both of them rejected me. Both of them rejected their grandkids. I didn't care that my parents were a nun and a priest. Every child of a priest thinks they're the only one. Google child of a priest. When I first did it, there were 68 million hits of people talking about this. This is a big thing, and the church has silenced it. The church has managed, with contractual NDAs or confidentiality agreements, or at least implied. So, the stereotypical is like my mother. She's younger, much younger. She's vulnerable. She doesn't have money. She doesn't have family to fall back on. She's vulnerable. And the priest is the hands and feet of God. You know, you don't say no to that.
Yeah. Well, there we are. That's where we're at. I've got to say, though, being the child of a priest and a nun, there would have been a lot of rules in that house, you know, if you were growing
Absolutely.
up with it.
And a lot of secrecy and an enormous amount of lies.
Brendan, thank you for joining us. The book, you can buy it right now. Tell no one. We're telling everyone. It's from all good bookstores. Brendan Watkins, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.